this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to create piping for your stud wall assembly. There are a few things you need to do in order to get your piping ready to go, so you can effectively use all the functions that piping offers. So I'm going to kind of just go over the basics of how systems work very quickly. So all you need right now is this stud project that we've been working on before. And if you don't, you can still follow along. It's really not that different. So we're going to start by going to the Systems tab. Now, the way that Revit used to operate is it used to have MEP services as separate elements, but now everything's all in one software. So it's divided by HVAC, plumbing, piping, and cable tray conduits. So there's obviously it's separated by the three, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, which is MEP. So for now we're just going to go over piping, and we're going to go over conduits a little bit later. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is how to set up our piping properly. So the way that the piping tools really work is they're meant to cover anything that's used for like domestic lines, hydronic lines, fire protection, drainage, and kind of what we want to do is we want to be able to distinguish the differences in these piping systems by color, and so that way we can tell, for instance, red would be hot water domestic lines, blue would be cold water domestic lines, and I don't know, purple would be drainage. So we're gonna go through how to add these, because I've worked on projects before where you would actually send out a wall assembly that actually had piping already in it, and then they would basically use a collar fitting to attach the pipes when they actually get on site. And you know, this is kind of going with the whole modular ideas that people have been coming up with now to kind of save time and schedule and material. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our piping systems and make sure that we have the three that we want to use set up properly. So we're going to start by going to our families down here in our project browser, and we're going to go to, there should be piping systems here. Piping system. So we've already got some of these set up. So we have domestic cold, domestic hot, and we have sanitary. We'll use sanitary as our drainage. So we're going to go to domestic cold. We're just going to right click this and go to type properties. So this is pretty much the same as any other type of properties. What we're going to do here, though, is we're going to look at our graphics overrides. So this is kind of just line weight for the most part. So for instance, if you wanted them to show up as dashed, or you know, some sort of different centerline type, or you know, different color, for instance, like this is cold water, so maybe we want this to be blue. Pattern, we want the pattern to stay solid, and like let's say we want the weight to stay no override, so we're just going to override the color, and then we're going to go to our material. So this is kind of the more interesting portion of it. This is actually transfers into 3D. So if you wanted to highlight all of your copper lines that are cold as blue, and you wanted to be able to do this with basically one click, you would do that here. So we're going to create some material here. So we're going to go search for our default material here, and then we're just going to actually duplicate it. This is how I like to do it. You don't have to do it this way if you don't want. We're going to name this domestic cold water. We're just going to find that. Where did it go? it's because I have a search up here. Whoops. So there it is. We're going to use rendered appearance, and then we're going to change the appearance here. Quick thing to note when changing the appearance here, make sure that you duplicate, because if you edit this will edit anything that is using this asset. So it's very important. So we're just going to duplicate. Notice how it's saying it's not sharing with anything, so it's a 0. We're going to change the color to blue like we did for the other one, and then we're going to hit OK. You can change other elements here, but these are just to highlight. We're not really interested in any of these actual textures, and just make sure that it transferred to here as well. So we're just going to hit OK, apply, and then we're going to do the same thing actually for hot and for drainage. So I'm just going to do that quickly here. Okay, so I basically took the DCW material type I made, I added it to here. If you're looking to do fluid calculations for specific type, then you can change stuff here. We're not going to do that here. This is just for basic layout, right? We're not doing the actual calculations in this tutorial. And then these are just basic drafting outlines. So it's basically saying what it's going to look like when it's a 2-line drop, yada yada, all these different ones here. I just keep the basics because they do a pretty good job of outlining everything. So I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to do the same thing for hot water. Go to type properties, edit, overwrite the lines to red, and then I'm going to go to material, and I'm going to find DHW, hit OK, and just hit OK, and then I'm going to go down to sanitary and do the exact same thing. I actually elected to make this green, so I'm just going to stay consistent and just find sanitary. It is. Hit OK, and then we're good to go, I think. So hit OK. So in this tutorial, I don't think we can go over pipe types now, so I'm just going to go over to the next portion of this, which is going over how pipe types work. So a piping system is the categories of pipes that you're going to be using, and pipe types is also kind of related to that, but is more related to the actual routing preferences that you want for your pipe. So the way Revit likes to operate is it wants you to just draw lines, and it wants to automatically put fittings on those pipes for you. So anything for Ys, for your traps, for your your 90s, everything. And you can go into we're actually gonna have to insert these. So we're going to load family. We're going to go to, where is it? Where's piping? So pipe, we're going to go to fittings. We're just going to load some generic ones here. And then we're just going to basically just shift select all these and open them. Now, in the cases of this, the reason why you would need multiple types is, let's say for instance you're working on well, in our case, we're working on domestic lines and sanitary lines. Sanitary lines aren't usually done in copper, they're usually PVC. And you'd create a separate pipe type for that type of system versus a domestic. So we're going to go to our default here, we're going to go to type properties, we're going to duplicate it, and we're going to call it domestic. Domestic lines. Hit OK. Then we're going to go to our routing preference here. So this is where we can select what we want to use here. So most of the time it's copper here for the pipe segment, so we're going to find copper. So it's going minimum size, maximum size. This is where you can kind of add a little bit of intelligence to it. You can say, you can add another one here, and you can say, let's say if it's bigger, we want it to be stainless steel, right? So our maximum size would be, for copper, would probably be 4-inch. And then from 4-inch, I guess 5-inch to 12-inch, we would want it to be stainless steel. You could do it that way as well, and it'll automatically develop it that way, but we're not going to do that because it can get a little complicated. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add all of our elbows in. So we're just going to add generics in here for now. Junction. So these are, so that's threaded. Yeah, we don't need those. We want just a generic one here for now. A cross, that's fine. Generic cross. Generic. So this is just typical. We're just going to do it simple for now. We can always come back and change these, so it's not a big deal. So we're going to do OK. You're fitting an elbow junction cross transition. Oh, right. So we have to. It's kind of silly that it closed it there. So we're going to set it to just all. It's kind of the same idea. Like you can set it to any size that you want, so it'll use this type of elbow at this size. So if let's say you went up to stainless steel, it's not going to use a generic elbow, right? It's probably going to use something a little more complicated, like a threaded or something. So you can actually set that in here, and I can go over that in other tutorials if people want to see that. Just go all. Is it okay? Hit OK. So now we have our pipe type for our domestic lines, and now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into our level 2 plan. We're going to look at our section here, and we're going to go over how to just in colors. It's fine. I'm just going to take a second. There we go. So we're just going to go and select our system here. We're going to select, where is it? Select pipe. We're going to change this to domestic lines, and then we're going to pick our system type. It defaults to hydronic, but just for this example we're going to pick cold, and then we're just going to go ahead and draw our pipe however we wanted. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw another one. We're going to make this one hot water. You can see how simple this is. So this is defaulting to a coarse detail. We're going to change it to fine so you can see the pipes. It actually made them far too big. We're going to select them, and these would probably be 3/4. You can actually tab through, so if you hit tab, now it's not working. There, so you hit tab, and you go here and switch it to 3/4. There you go. So we're just going to go back to level 2 here real quick. So you can see, unfortunately, when you draw it, it draws it on this section. We just need to move this. So we're just going to move from here, center it here. We're going to go back into our 3D view. We're going to change this to fine detail. Then we're actually going to go back to level 2. Cut a section through here. So piping can be a little tricky. You have to really cut sections and think about where you're drawing while you're doing it. Go into here. It should be right there. Let's try this one more time. Level 2. It's blocked by this stud here, that's why. For some reason I can't select it, that's weird. So I'm just gonna actually go here. I'm just gonna filter out the structural members, the fittings. Hit OK. I'm gonna actually move this back outside. And then I'm gonna go back into here. I'm gonna select this pipe, this hot water one. I'm gonna select, so you see this little node here? You can left click on there, hit draw pipe, and then draw like a little element off the front. We're going to go to this one here, same thing, draw pipe. Go to our 3D view. There you go. So that's kind of the basics of it. So that's the basics of setting up a pipe system and routing preferences. In the next video, we're going to go over how to create our sanitary line, and we're also going to look at how to add a plumbing fixture in, so that way we can connect this system in, because in a lot of cases that I've seen, you'll actually ship this with some sort of plumbing fixture attached and the piping already connected to it. So we'll take a look at that in the next video. Like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you in the next one.